how long I've been waiting for this. Woo, I'm about to make a name for myself here.
Hey y'all, and welcome back to Carbon Scoring, the best place for comics, history, and action figures, and home of the mystery box. And we have got a character-specific mystery box for you today. Yes, we are going to be looking at Marvel's Gambit, that Cajun mystery thief of a character. So we're going to go through all the different figures of Gambit that I have. We're going to look at some of his history and see just like what makes this character tick. Why is he so enduringly popular? But in order to know that, you really have to dig into the mystery that is Gambit. And that mystery started with his origin in the books, which, as you'll see, isn't actually as clear-cut as we would like for it to be. Remy Etienne Lebeau grew up as an orphan on the streets of New Orleans. His Cajun heritage ran deep, but his lost childhood led him to becoming one of the greatest pickpockets in the Big Easy. When he attempted to lift the wallet off of Jean-Luc Lebeau, then the patriarch of the Thieves Guild, Lebeau scooped the boy up and raised him in the ways of thievery. Remy's mutant powers manifested around the age of 15, his ability to control and manipulate pure kinetic energy. He kept these a secret from the Thieves Guild until an encounter with the slave trader known as Pig forced his hand, and he discovered his patented move of charging and throwing a playing card. Gambit was created by legendary X-Men scribe Chris Claremont and rising superstar artist Jim Lee. This we can all agree upon. But his first comic appearance gets a little murky. He was supposed to debut in Uncanny X-Men issue 266, with a cover by Andy Kubert and interior pencils by Mike Collins. It's an issue where he befriends a de-aged Storm, who, it just so happens, as a child was the greatest pickpocket in all of Cairo. The story continued in X-Men Annual 14, drawn by the legendary Art Adams. Gambit's only in a couple of panels, and he doesn't really play much of a part in the story. It is a relatively uninspiring debut, but as with all things Gambit, there's more to the story. You see, due to a scheduling error with the printers, Annual 14 came out 3 weeks before Uncanny 266, technically making it Gambit's first printed appearance. Which is his true first issue? Still a matter of debate. What is not debatable is the character's instant popularity. From the beginning, Gambit was carrying secrets, and several of the X-Men never fully trusted him. It was later discovered that he was working with Mr. Sinister and led a team to kill the Morlocks during the Mutant Massacre. Remy actually saved lives that day, but the shadows of his past would always haunt him going forward. All right, now that we know a little bit about Gambit's backstory, we've got to get into this costume because it is truly one of the most 90s costumes you will ever see. I mean, it really represents that decade completely to a T. And Jim Lee was the designer of this costume, the brilliant artist who his issue 1 of X-Men is still the single best-selling comic of all time. And a lot of that popularity was creating characters like Gambit. So this is the original Marvel Legends Gambit. This one came out in series 4, I believe, which was around 2003. So this actually premiered before Marvel Legends began doing Build-A-Figure waves. So that's how early Gambit was in the Marvel Legends line. And I just kind of want to go piece by piece through Gambit's entire look because it's just kind of magical. None of this, absolutely none of this should work. This is the most ridiculous superhero costume that you're ever going to see, but somehow it comes together. And you have to begin with his mask. Now, the typical reason for having a mask when you're a superhero is to hide your identity. Well, Gambit's mask does the exact opposite of that. It not only shows off his entire face, it actually accentuates his features. Now, Gambit has an incredibly thin face and really, really high cheekbones, and that's why he's able to get away with this cut on the mask up here near his cheek. Now, Channing Tatum did an incredible job of portraying Gambit in the Deadpool Wolverine movie. And by no means is Channing Tatum out of shape. I mean, he's incredibly physically fit. But he has a little bit of a rounded face, and it looked like it was getting kind of pinched in the design of Gambit's mask. Like you almost have to have a completely emaciated face, almost like Kevin Bacon would be like the type of person that could potentially get away with wearing this mask. But Remy here, he pulls it off because he does have that thin, really defined features. This sculpt is so good. You've got the cocked up eyebrow and the little bit of a smirk coming through his 5 o'clock shadow. Just so character specific. What a brilliant sculpt from a figure that was produced 23 years ago. Unbelievable. Now, the hair is a big part of this. He's got kind of the side part and the big wavy curls. And listen, I mean, we know that Gambit is portrayed very much as a ladies' man, and for sure, the hair has got to be a part of it. We're going to see his hair in so many different variations as we go through these figures, but this is pretty classic for the Jim Lee look with the big swooping hair coming down. Now, he has like an armor piece around the base of his neck, and it's got this kind of nonsensical geographic or geometric pattern on it. Can't explain that. Makes absolutely no sense. Underneath, it's like almost like a pink or like a fuchsia bodysuit that kind of runs like through his torso and chest with like stripes, like almost pink or fuchsia stripes going down his tights down to his legs. On his legs, you've got like armored boots. They're like a metallic or armored boot with this distinctive knee pad with a triangle on it. And again, that's something that's going to be seen all the way around. The gloves, of course, they've got to be cool. So it's not just that the fingers are exposed, it's that the fingers are exposed on 3 of his 5 fingers. So his thwipping fingers actually still have the gloves on the full fingers, but the others don't. And the Toy Biz figure is so great for that because it has that classic Toy Biz articulation. Now, they gave him a very specific and unique sculpt for his hand where he would throw his cards. You can see the fingers are splayed out, so that works and was very specific for the character. Now, the mask, the suit, all of these things are major parts of Gambit's look, but nothing says Gambit like the trench coat. And this version of the Toy Biz figure has a cloth trench coat. It doesn't have any underwire, so it just sort of flaps around. It does have the belt that comes around, and it's got a good collar on it. I cannot think of anything more stupid to try to fight crime and fight bad guys in than a trench coat. I mean, it just is fully and completely nonsensical, but it wouldn't be Gambit without it. So, I mean, here's to you, Gambit. You pull it off, and they even pulled it off in Deadpool Wolverine, but it just a heavy garment. And they tried to like tie that into Gambit's origin, that like one time he was on a thieving mission and was incredibly cold, and he said he was going to go back to New Orleans and steal a heavy coat. Whatever. It's what Jim Lee gave us, and in its own way, it is fully brilliant, and it's as big a part of the character as anything. Gambit was so popular from his initial appearance that he appeared in one of the earliest waves of the 90s X-Men figures. So this toy actually came out in Series 2 all the way back in 1992. So this figure is over 30 years old, and it's in remarkably good shape. And I know that some of those early Toy Biz sculpts left a lot to be desired. They were pretty plain. But truthfully, you hit all of the highlights of Gambit with this figure. You've got the open mask with his face. You've got his hair swooping around. You've got the insane 90s colors of kind of teal and pink, right there. The trench coat is a really, really thin vinyl, but it is kind of a soft good. The collar on this one actually is plastic, so it stays up, whereas you just have this really, really thin top coat. I believe he came with a staff, and like those early figures, he has a play feature where you can, yeah, there it is. Oh, that's kind of awesome. So you just hit this lever on his back, boom, and you're going to get kicked in the jaw. So, being a skilled fighter was another one of Gambit's, hallmarks, but that's actually really good for 1992, but Toy Biz wasn't done. In their 5-inch line, they produced several more Gambit figures, and one of the next ones that they produced was in the Light Ups line. This is not that figure, but the base body is the same as the one from the Light Ups. So you have all the features. You've got the collar, armored collar, you've got the knee pads with the triangle, and you have a much better, much more detailed trench coat, and just an overall better looking figure. He also has kind of a play feature. He can do, well, I think let's not talk about that anymore. Let's just ignore that play feature. But the original one actually had a light up feature, and his playing cards would light up. They re-released the body, but with a new head sculpt in the X-Men versus Street Fighter line. So that's actually what this figure is from. It's from the X-Men versus Street Fighter 2-packs. He has a little bit more of an animated sculpt, bigger smile, bigger hair, just kind of has that cartoony look. And he came in a pack with Cammy from Street Fighter. So this one I also have down in my typical X-Men display because it just really, I think it's a far more accurate look for the character. Whereas this first one from Series 2 back in 1992, I have him on display with kind of those original X-Men figures because he fits in better with that. But Toy Biz certainly no stranger to Gambit. They actually released a few more, but I don't have those. Now, the next figure that came out prior to Marvel Legends actually would have been this one, the Famous Covers Gambit. Now, if you guys are longtime followers of the channel, you know how much I love the Famous Covers line. It was designed to be an 8-inch line of figures, but because of production screw-ups at the factory, the figures came out to be 9 inches. But it was meant to honor the Mego figures, the cloth costumed Mego figures of the 1970s, but with a new spin. So this is an all cloth costume. Doesn't have kind of that armored look, but there is sort of a puffy aspect to his belt and to his collar that sort of gives it the effect. The head sculpt, while a little bit grumpy, certainly gets that gaunt, high cheekboned look of Gambit. And the hair's maybe a little bit more calm than what we're going to see on some other versions, but still really, really cool. Boots, you get the triangle in there. He's got a little bit of articulation. I don't know why they went with blue on the gloves instead of black, particularly because it's clearly black. His undersuit kind of makes it stand out. Don't love that as much. But again, it's Gambit, and it's all about the trench coat. Now, years and years ago, I think I pinned the trench coat in a little bit to get it to kind of bunch up a little bit better in the back so that it sort of flowed when you have the figure standing. And this guy is on permanent display in my office as a part of my Famous Covers collection. They didn't do a ton of X-Men figures. We got like Wolvie, Cyclops, Storm, Phoenix, Dark Phoenix, not even regular Phoenix, Dark Phoenix. But Gambit was such a popular character at the time, he made the list. So cool. 9 inches of cloth costumed goodness there. Awesome. Let's see who we want to pull up next. We've looked at the first Toy Biz Gambit, but they actually re-released the figure. It's almost identical, but this was in a 5-pack. And I believe that 5-pack had a Magneto with like a new head. It had a maskless Wolverine. It had Beast with his lab coat. And it had our first Marvel Legends figure of Rogue. So if you've got Rogue in there, you obviously have to have Remy with her. And the difference with this is instead of the cloth trench coat, it's more of a pleather one. And unfortunately, over the years, over the decades, that pleather has started to fade and crack and get dry. And there's not really much you can do about that. But it does kind of hang a little bit heavier on the figure. It's a little bit darker. I think I still prefer the original Marvel Legends version, but this is a cool one to have, a cool variant of Gambit to have. Let's move into Marvel Legends proper with this 6-inch figure of Gambit. So this is the Gambit from 2019 from the Caliban Build-A-Figure wave. And I think it's really meant to be a classic Gambit, and it's pretty close. I mean, the elements of the costume are there. You've got that great kind of geometric pattern. The trench coat looks really, really good, and it doesn't hinder the articulation because the arm pieces are separate and they work outside of that. He does have the dedicated hand sculpt. I think where this one let collectors down, one, it seems a little bit dark. The coloring of everything just seems a little bit dark. And I don't think any of us really loved the way the hair is just like all swooped to one side. It doesn't have that kind of even split that we saw on the Toy Biz figure didn't have an even split, but it was like more one way than the other. But this is just like all one way. Like he's standing in a hurricane coming from this direction, which, coming from New Orleans might actually make a little bit of sense. They did improve on this though. They took basically the same body and improved upon it with the retro card. So as you can see, it's the same body. We got to scrape some old Gambit leather off there. Same body, but look at how much better it looks with the brighter colors. Even just the brighter colors of the trench coat make a huge difference. But where they really changed it was they changed the head. They've got the hair looking far more comic accurate, much more like what he looks like on the retro card. Plus, with this figure, you can see the accessories that he came with. He came with the extra hand where his throwing cards are coming out and his bow staff. Really cool. Unfortunately, this is the only one of this that I picked up. I think it was a Target exclusive, and I really hate to open it up. I'm gonna keep this one in package because I love these retro cards, and I've got a different Gambit that's up in my display, but if I didn't have the one that we're going to see at the very end of this video in my display, I would probably crack this one open and use it in my X-Men display as the most comic accurate Gambit. Gambit was in the Marvel Select line. There was a time frame there where Marvel Select was really kind of concentrating on X-Men characters, and they did some really nice versions of these. Now, as you guys know, Marvel Select are 7-inch scale, so they're a little bit bigger than your Marvel Legends, but they also do not have nearly the level of articulation that Marvel Legends have, but they've gotten better over the years with that. I mean, he has ball shoulders, he has ball hips, little bit of, a little bit of Elvis swivel going on with his abdomen there. But certainly they're not going to be able to pose the way that you can pose a Marvel Legend. So what they do instead is they tend to focus on sculpt. And I think you can see that. You can see just how well sculpted this head is. The head does have nice articulation on a ball joint, a little ball hinge up there. Great hair on this guy. Terrific 5 o'clock shadow. But it's the trench coat for me that really stands out. You've got the back flap, you've got the belt, all of this, the nice paint wash. This era with Diamond Select coincided with a time where Hasbro's Marvel Legends output didn't have nearly the paint wash. So it really stood out in comparison to see kind of the musculature brought out, to see the folds of the cloth of his trench coat brought out. So really cool figure. Love the knees. You get more of the silver instead of the blue look. I think it's really good. It's actually a really good figure. And when you stand him up with the other Diamond Select X-Men, it looks really, really great. There was a slight time frame where Gambit had a little bit of a different look, more with the red bandana here and his hair much flatter. So this is kind of like emo Gambit. This is the Marvel Universe 3 3/4 inch line. He came in a 2-pack with Mr. Sinister, so that really harkens back to his origin when he was with the Thieves Guild and actually did some contract work for Mr. Sinister, so putting the two of them in a 2-pack made sense. They did a more comic accurate version, a more traditional kind of classic comic accurate version of him in the Wolverine Origins movie line. We did not get Taylor Hitch as Gambit in that line, but we did get a comic Gambit. Pretty cool, nice little detail of the buttons. I like the bandana. We're going to see how that gets used again, and I like the fact that when they went with the hair, they did go with a different style for this. Otherwise, it's very much a classic looking Gambit. Now, there were a few instances of Gambit wearing different costumes, and one of the earliest ones of those was when the X-Men were transported to Shi'ar space by Lila Cheney and were all in their Xavier school uniforms. I am so thankful that Hasbro brought out every single one of these. As you guys remember, there were 2 3-packs, plus we got a single carded Wolverine, and then we later got Professor Xavier. So we can almost fully complete that cover from X-Men 275. We do still need kind of a Savage Land Rogue, and we need a Deathbird to go with that. But there was something just so cool about seeing all of them in their traditional costumes. And you got Gambit here in his blue and yellow costume, but he still has his traditional mask and that really cool hair. It is more swooped to one side, but it's not quite as just sort of emo as the other one. And this one, being a newer figure than some of the ones that we've seen previously, has got that new inkjet technology on the facial print, and you can see how much more detail is allowed to get into the figure with that. Just looks so good. Plus, they gave him his satchel so that he can carry his playing cards and whatnot that he can then throw to use as a weapon. Very, very cool figure. But there is one other one that has a unique costume that I want us to take a look at. And that would be the Age of Apocalypse Gambit. So this is actually my newest Gambit figure. I just recently picked this up as part of the Nemesis wave. And this Gambit, I think, looks really kind of awesome. Lots of new parts. Pretty sure this is a completely new head sculpt, new arms, new cape. Really, really good look. He does come with his standard bow, and he had a couple of extra hands. Now, we saw on that Marvel Universe 3 3/4 inch figure, the red bandana. They kind of took that look and created more of a cape with it during the Age of Apocalypse story. And in that, Gambit was still kind of a master thief, but he was a member of Magneto's X-Men. Let me know. We've pretty much finished, I think, getting all of the Age of Apocalypse figures that we're going to get. If you guys would like a retrospective on that story and the figures that have come from it, let me know. David from Displaying Model Behavior has done a really good one, but if you guys want me to take a shot at it, I'm happy to give it a whirl. This is a good figure. You know, it's on a pinless body. It's the newer stuff, better paint apps, and just really, it's got kind of almost that leathery kind of Robin Hood look, which I think it kind of sums Gambit up. And I think even in the Age of Apocalypse storyline, he was kind of a steal from the rich, give to the poor character in a time where Apocalypse's timeline really was horrible for most everybody. So pretty sweet looking figure. I think this is a good one, and I can't wait to get it in combination with the rest of my Age of Apocalypse figures. Now, this guy is the amazing Yamaguchi Gambit. And if you've watched any of my Spider-Man videos where I feature the amazing Yamaguchi Spider-Man figures, you know that these are not exactly my favorite action figures. And it's because they do have unprecedented amounts of articulation, but they do it at the cost of the sculpt. And so, yeah, you get this guy into some kind of crazy pose, and it will look pretty good, but there's so many gaps. There's so many things that, in pursuit of ridiculous articulation, you just kind of lose in the overall look of the figure. Now, this Gambit in particular has a very, very anime head style. It doesn't have a lot of paint wash on there, so it looks kind of flat when you look at it. He's got super anime hair, right? Like, look at how awesome that hair is. But what's crazy about this guy is you can actually change the faceplate out. So instead of swapping heads, you actually remove one faceplate and stick another one. There's a little peg up there. Let's see if I can do it on camera without having to look down. Everything's always easier when you're not on camera working on these things. Oh, there it is. Okay, nope, there it's not. Anyway, I think we're getting the idea of this. You peg the face sculpt. There it goes. You peg the face sculpt up into the head and you get another look. Now, that one you can see, it looks even more anime. And the lack of paint wash around his features really kind of flattens it out. I wanted to just sort of show you, look at how wild the articulation is. So it doesn't actually connect at the shoulder to the body. It connects at the trench coat. So you peg the trench coat in, and then the shoulder is attached to the coat and moves off of that. The trench coat itself has multiple ball joints, which allows it to kind of, stay up. He has the wild Yamaguchi hips and, the super crazy ball knees. There's even a little piece of articulation on his knee pad, which is necessary to kind of cover up from that pretty grotesque ball joint. So this one I don't think I'm ever going to have on display, but it's still kind of a neat look at a different way of making toys. Now, Gambit from X-Men 97 was truly one of the breakout characters in that incredible cartoon. And his story is one that, hey, it will be told, right? So they did a great job with this. I think when I looked at this, it's predominantly new parts. I think maybe the trench coat is new. The body is reused from the previous Marvel Legend Gambit because, it was really spot on. I think the upper arms are reused, but the lower arms are new. And of course, he has an all-new head sculpt that so much more closely matches the animated X-Men 97 look. I love the colors on this. I think it's much closer to the comic look, and it really kind of fits the cartoon. The accessories, this card throwing accessory is super, super cool. Again, Gambit is going to be limited by these plastic trench coats. It's going to be really hard to get him into some of the acrobatic scenes that you would like to with these Marvel Legends figures, but standing on a shelf, he still looks really good. But I do have one more, and it is by far my favorite Gambit figure, and that's the Mayafex. This is the one that really brings everything together. It has the incredible sculpt. Look at that head. He's got that little smirk. He's got the eyebrow up. He's got the 5 o'clock shadow. Great metallic paint for his shell and on his boots with those triangles. So super accurate there. Tons of accessories. We'll see some more later. I've got him with kind of the kind of power up effect coming out of his fingers, and of course his bow staff. Now, this is a Mayafex figure, so it does have incredibly smooth articulation that you can get him into any number of great poses, and he's going to stay there. But you can see it. You can see it from the second I pulled it up. The feature that makes this the best Gambit is the trench coat. So the trench coat has an underwire, and you can get it into all kinds of gorgeous dynamic poses. So this is the guy that is up in my X-Men display on the shelf. So good. I've got him in like a flying pose. Now, he came with some really cool accessories, two of which are these. He has these really huge like throwing cards where you can have them where it poses out of his hand and it's like he has swept his arm across the front of you and he's throwing these cards. There's a bigger one and then a slightly smaller one. But even the smaller one is so heavy that he can't hold it in his hand. And Mayafex actually gave us a second stand to try to hold it up, which I appreciate that. I appreciate that they tried to give us a way to utilize this and pose it, but it's just, it's too heavy. You can see how big it is. And this is the smaller one, but you can still see how big it is compared to the figure. So I haven't been able to figure out a way to use that, but that's okay because this is kind of the most ideal, most classic, most comic accurate, most dynamic version of Gambit. So let me know what you guys think. Which one of these was your favorite? What are some of your favorite comic memories or cartoon or movie memories of everybody's favorite Cajun thief, Remy LeBeau Gambit? And as always, for the best in comics history and action figures, subscribe to Carbon Scoring.